Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. So today's video is going to be about how you can score much better in your 10th grade examinations. I know that your exams are literally in 2 months and obviously there's not a lot of time left. I'm gonna try to give you the easiest and the shortest way possible in which you can score really good marks. And one of the primary reasons why I'm making this video is because one of my friends texted me and he's like, hey man, I need some tips for 10th grade. Can you make a video about this since you're making so many videos on YouTube? And I was like, of course I can. That's not even a question. Alright, so tip number 1 is obviously going to be solving your last 10-year board papers. Solving the last 5 years board papers should be enough because that is definitely going to be majority of the questions that can come in your board examinations. And when you solve them, make sure that you are actually writing down what is the answers of the questions in the papers. Get them checked. I know a lot of you guys might ask, how can you even get them checked because of the whole coronavirus situation? But 2 years ago, when I was in the 10th grade, my teachers were extremely sweet and supportive. They literally told me that if you guys solve question papers, that will correct them for you. And if that is not possible for you, then go to your tuition teachers or go to your professors and then ask them to. Worst case scenario, tell your parents or you sit down yourself and check them, but be honest about it. Also, when you're solving the question answers, don't look in the textbook. Try to solve as much as you can by yourself, and then whatever's left, sit later and then solve it. And don't leave any options. It should not take you a lot of time because you're not going to be focusing on writing the answers completely. You'll be focused more on writing them in points so that you save time. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. One is that you write in points, but then in the final exam you won't be able to write in points. So that would mean that there could be a time problem where your time constraint will cause you to not finish your question paper on time. So if you are someone who knows that you write slow, practice timing yourself, because that's going to be the easiest way that you'll know that you're going to be able to finish the question paper. If you are someone like me who literally finishes the paper like 45 minutes before the paper time ends, well, go ahead and practice writing in points. And while you're doing this, try solving at least 5 papers a day. I know it sounds like a lot, but when you actually sit down, do it this way. If your examination is for 2.5 hours, set a timer for 2.5 hours and then start writing your paper. As soon as you're done writing the paper, leave the paper aside. Whatever time is remaining, it's your time to do whatever you want. And then once that timer goes off, set another timer, sit again, do it, because 2 months is barely anything. It's like literally 60 days. So I'd say that sprint as much as you can. And this is what one of my professors used to say. If you don't study now, you'll repent later. If you guys know who that was, comment down below. And another teacher of mine used to say, board aake sar pe khada ho jayega. And believe me, it really works that way. And if you haven't felt the rush of your boards by now, trust me, it is high time that you should be studying a lot. Tip number 2 is definitely going to be solving prelim papers of other schools. Well, the year before last, we had this book that we got which could give you papers of many different schools. There were 2 books in fact, part 1 and part 2, and it had the prelim papers of best schools in Mumbai. And if you don't want to buy so many books, then do one thing. Contact your friends, tell them about this, share this video and tell them that this is the easiest way that you can score. And then you can go ahead and separate them by the school name or even by the subjects that you're going to be studying. So that's the easiest way if you don't want to spend a lot of money on those 2 books or buy so many books which weigh a lot. Now, even for this thing, the only important thing is that just by writing papers and knowing what questions are going to come, you won't score in boards. The easiest way is to get them checked. And if you don't know an answer, leave it blank. Leave it blank or, write anything that you want so that you know how much you're going to be scoring in the board exam. And that way you'll be able to solve as many questions as possible and then come back to it later. And then once you're done writing that paper, write it on a separate sheet of paper. And then if you're someone who has this thing about rote learning, I don't think that rote learning is really helpful in a lot of these matters, while in other subjects it can be helpful. So that's your ball game. Okay, tip number 3 is definitely going to be omissions. There are some books, like the year before last when I was giving my board exams, we had about 10 to 15% of the portion easily which was omitted but still given in our history textbook. I would recommend that if you can find a professor who's very sure about this and has been teaching for a very long time, get those omissions. There is nothing in the world that will make your job easier to study if you have so many omissions, because one, it literally gives you a moral boost. Your morale will literally go, like, you'll feel like you want to study, because as soon as I got to know that 12th grade there's 25% portion reduction, I was the happiest person in the world and I started studying even more simply because of that. Okay, coming back to tip number 2 for 1 second. I didn't tell you guys what are some of the good schools that you should be solving the papers of. Well, there are many. I'm not saying that one school is better than the other, but there are some schools that set their paper in accordance to the board examination, and so many of those questions end up coming in the board examinations. I think some of these schools, like some of the schools that I personally ended up solving papers from, were Campion, Cathedral, CNMS, Jamnabai. CNMS is Chhatrabhuj, by the way. Jamnabai, Janki Devi, even AVM, Arya Vidya Mandir. In fact, I'd say that if you can at least try solving 5 to 6 of these schools. I had solved, I think, about 15 or 16 different school papers, and trust me, that helped me a lot and got them checked. The checking part is what's important. Alright, now this is tip number 4, which is very small, but work smart, don't work hard. Here's the thing, you have 2 months, which is 60 days, and you have so many topics. Use your resources very well. For so many of my subjects, I literally watched YouTube videos for them. So yeah, study what's needed and analyze your question papers from the last 5 years so well that you know, like, okay, let's say there are 2 questions that are being repeated or 3 questions that are consistently being asked in the last 3 years. You know it can come. Alright, so those were the important tips in general. Now let's go ahead and get into each and every subject. First off, let's talk about something which I have heard a lot of children hate, but personally it was one of my favorite topics: history, civics. Now, history is definitely lengthy at times, but you can make it fun if you think of it as a storyline. If you have to write down dates, write down timelines, you know that can be asked. Write down names of books. Like, one question that I know I lost marks in back in 10th grade was 2 books by Dadabhai Nauroji. That is something that I still regret till this day. 2 books. It wasn't even properly given in the textbook. So make sure if there are questions like these, you should know the answers to them. And another thing is that while you're studying civics, there are going to be innumerable points given in that civics book, like let's say seats in the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, features of the cabinet, all of that. Learn what's needed. Learn as much as you need to. Don't learn 10 points from one thing where only a 2-mark question can come. Learn 4, learn 6. That's it. So that if you forget something in the examination, you know that you can kind of swap out things and make it work that way. Now coming to geography. Another thing that a lot of people hate in geography is map marking. I despised it. And I also hated topography initially, but then I had a lovely professor. He was super sweet and he taught us very well. So topography was, knock on wood, it went very well. Well, you see, you should be practicing topography and map marking, and if you follow solving the last 5-year papers and at least 10 to 12 Prelim papers, believe me, you won't have to bother about topography and map marking. Trust me, you'll be able to score very well in it. Also, in geography, you should study smart, and this is what I mean by study smart. There are chapters like, as far as I remember back in 10th grade, climate and natural vegetation. These were 2 chapters that were like separate, and then they had 10 marks of their own category. And then there were other chapters like rainwater harvesting or something which was clubbed together. Like agriculture had 4 chapters and then they were clubbed together and given for 10 marks. Try to learn the smaller chapters in a way that you can completely finish it, and you know, you can kind of learn it. It's basically like saying learn less, but for more marks. The weightage is what matters in the examination. I personally studied exactly 5 chapters because that's all that was there. Those were all individual chapters. Studied 5 chapters and I got like a 92 out of 100 in geography. I'm proud of that. Now coming to something that I absolutely hated, mathematics. Here's the very simple truth about maths. One, you have to practice maths to be in the habit of it. And secondly, maths, your steps are what's needed if you want to score. I never wrote the steps correctly. I skipped steps. I did so much of. I worked really hard in mathematics, but I never scored too well. The reason was very simple. I did not write the steps perfectly. So if you're not in the habit of writing the steps, make sure you write it. If you want, even calculations, make sure there are some people who mess up their calculations. Focus on that. That's the easiest way. You'll easily end up earning like 5 to 6 marks in the whole paper just because you checked your calculations. Now coming to science. First off, you have physics. Physics, make sure that you know what derivations can come in the examination. Don't learn derivations that are not going to come. In 10th grade, I personally learned only 1 or 2 derivations. Secondly, learn all the definitions very well. Ohm's law, I know 12th standard definitions like Kirchhoff's law, Ohm's law and all of that, but learn your definitions, refractive index, all of that. Also focus on numericals because numericals are the easiest way to score. In fact, if you look at papers, majority of those marks are literally in numericals and kind of application based questions, and there are still some definitions or any sort of theory part. So I'd say that make sure that your numericals are sorted out. Then comes units. This is something that is very important. Know your units very well. And I'd say that from now on, get into the habit of writing the units perfectly. Like there are times when a lot of people could write coulomb instead of ampere or voltage instead of ampere. Don't do that. Joule instead of kilojoule. And another thing is that when you're writing answers, write them in point form and make sure that you are giving examples with the answers. Now let's come to chemistry. I can assure you that everyone watching who is in 10th grade probably hates organic chemistry. Comment down below if you don't. I swear to God, if you hate organic chemistry, like this video. Believe me, I hated organic chemistry so much, I kept running away from it. People tried to explain it to me 3 times and I still did not understand it. Simply for the reason I didn't want to understand it. Believe me, organic chemistry is so easy, and if you're going to take science in 11th and 12th grade, trust me, spend your time with organic chemistry. If you're using Selena publications, the chemistry, I think Selena or yes, 99% Selena publications. Behind the book, you will literally have all of the lab prep methods or acylation of alkenes, all of that literally given, all the chemical reactions, everything given at the end of the book. The last couple of pages, that's all that you really need to study for chemical reactions. And focus on organic chemistry. There are so many videos on YouTube. Even physics and chemistry, I literally only used to watch Physics Wala on YouTube. That is literally everything I studied. And then coming to the second topic of chemistry that a lot of people hate, stoichiometry. This is another topic that is actually very easy, but a lot of people simply hate it because of the calculations and everything. So spend your time watching some videos, try learning it from your professors. This will really not only help you in 10th, but also if you take science in your further grades like 11th, 12th, maybe engineering, it definitely will help you. Now coming to the subject that I love in science, biology. I personally feel that this is the easiest subject if you can kind of learn things and understand things in a very concise manner. And I'd say that overall in biology, you really need to study some chapters more than the others. So if possible, try to see from your last 10-year papers which chapter has more weightage than the other. And I think that's the easiest way to literally score better in your bio examination. There are also some chapters which can seem very complicated, but they aren't. And Practice your diagrams. Believe me, your diagrams will literally fetch you so many marks, because there are questions wherein you have to label, there are questions where you have to probably draw, and overall I'd say that that is literally the best part about biology. If you can learn diagrams very well, you've scored like extraordinarily good. Oh, and another thing is that part 1 of biology, the 40 marks, believe me, if you spent your time reading the textbook properly, you can easily score 40 out of 40 in that. At least a 36 or a 38. Because that is, and you should be able to finish that within like 15 to 20 minutes. Like when I did my bio paper in boards, I was done within like an hour and a half. I had not even left any options. Like I solved question 1 to question 10, I guess, and solved everything. Literally went ahead and solved everything. So I'd say that biology is one subject that you can really score well in if you understand the chapters very well. Now we'll come to my favorite subjects. Literally my favorite, English. One, English literature, and secondly, English language. Let's begin with English literature. This is definitely the easiest subject in which you can score. I scored like a 99, I guess, in literature. And the cool part about this is that there is literally not a lot that you need to study in literature. If you've read your textbook properly, if you've read your novel properly, and if you've read your poems properly, you should be able to score pretty well. Go through your figures of speech. If you want, go online and you can literally find figures of speech for every line of the poem that you have. And from today, since the time that you watch this video, try doing at least 2 topics from your textbook, which is like, and topics, I mean, I don't even care if you're doing poems or your literature prose. Just do anything, 2 topics a day, and believe me, you keep repeating this, you'll be very well sorted out for your board examination. And when you're writing the paper, make sure that you give very detailed answers, make sure that you give character sketches if needed, and make sure that you know character sketches very well, because that is something that's very, very important. It can literally give you about 5 to 6 marks in your board exam. And also use YouTube, use technology to its finest. When you go on YouTube and you search for a specific topic, if you're not in the mood to read it, just play the YouTube video and they literally narrate it to you. There are literally so many video explanations of 10th grade that are available out there. You can literally use that, and that is going to be the perfect way to score good in English literature. Now coming to English language. This is a topic that people actually don't score too well in for some reason, and I don't get by the life of it, why can't they? It is literally so easy. I understand that maybe while you're speaking, your English is not very good. However, at least when you're writing, you have so much time that you can literally go ahead and spend all your time making sure you're writing very well. Let's go in an order. First off, you have your essay. The easiest thing to do in an essay is learning at least 5 to 6 idioms and 5 to 6 proverbs. If you want, I literally give them to you. Numero uno, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It means to be very excited. Second, apple of my mother's eye. Third one would be raining cats and dogs. That means raining very heavily. Fourth one could be butterflies in my stomach. That means to be very nervous. Fifth one could be Achilles heel. Achilles heel is your weak point. Yeah, so you can use all of these, and these are something that are very common, and you can literally use them and they'll literally they will fetch you brownie points in your exam. I am not even kidding. You can score so well just by writing these. And here's another tip. When you're writing the essay, I would tell you that focus on writing as fast as you can and include these idioms and proverbs if you can. Here's a couple of proverbs too. The pen is mightier than the sword. An eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. You can try using there is enough for man's need but not for man's greed. Honesty is the best policy. Honesty is the best policy might sound too simple, but believe me, when you start thinking about it from the most basic perspective, you will probably end up finding much better and really good ones, really good proverbs too. So I'd say that start reading up on your proverbs, brush up on your language skills, and you'll be good. And another thing is, as soon as you're done writing the essay, move on to the other things like your summary, your email, and make sure that you know the format of the email very well, because that is extremely important. If you mess up in the format of your email or your letter, you're literally losing out marks that you could easily score. So let's say you're not very good at English, but you can still easily score 2.5 marks or 2 marks. I'm not very sure what it is for the letter, but that is literally right in your pocket. They're literally giving you those marks, and if you're losing out on them, what are you even doing? And then comes those questions where you have to fill out the prepositions. Don't lose out on marks. Don't lose marks in them. Like, believe me, solve those in the prelim papers, in the last 5-year papers, and you should be able to get most of them. I think there are 8 of them, and then 2 are tricky, while the rest 6 are very easy. If you do it properly, then you should be able to get all 8 marks. They're literally right there for you to take. And before I forget, the comprehension, you do not have to pick up the words from the paragraph and literally vomit them out onto your answer sheet. Paraphrase. What does paraphrase mean? Change up the words, change up the tense if you want. Okay, maybe not change up the tense, but change up the subject. So that would be active voice to passive voice, or just change up the formation of the sentences so that you can easily, so that you don't lose marks in your comprehension. Now we only have 2 subjects left. One is Hindi, the other is your third group. I took computer science in the third group, so that's what I'll be talking about. But before I do that, let me tell you about Hindi. I think Hindi is a very easy subject because, one, there is a limited number of things that you need to learn, and I'm sure a lot of you must already be talking in Hindi. So when you speak in Hindi now, try to speak in a way that is a more refined sort of Hindi. So instead of saying something like mere ko or tere ko, don't say that. Just go mujhe, tumhe, and all of that. Another thing is practice writing, because believe me, most of you are probably going to lose marks in your matras. The way you speak, you'll start to realize that Hindi is literally as it sounds. So let's say Shakti. There's a difference between Shakti, so it's a choti matra. And yeah, the easiest way is practice writing Hindi and sounds. Those sounds, if you get the hang of the sound, then you can easily score pretty well in Hindi. I scored like a 90, 97 in Hindi. Now coming to the third elective subject, that is computer science. I think computer science is definitely something that I absolutely adore. And I would tell you that you should already know the different types of questions that can come in your board exam for the programming part. In programming, I know this for a fact that usually you would get patterns, you would get binary searching or sorting, you would get one question about arrays, you would get one question maybe Fibonacci series or something like that. If you've solved the last 10-year papers of computer science and the prelim papers from different schools, there's no way that you can not score full in your computer exam. Those 60 marks, they're literally right there yet again for you to fetch. That's all you need to do, and make sure that you practice writing on paper. This is a mistake that I made initially. I used to type everything on a laptop, and then as soon as I got an error, I was like very cool about it, removed the curly braces, put them again. Don't do that. Focus on writing them on a sheet of paper. That's very important. Another thing is that when you're writing your computer exam, I would personally tell you that if you feel that you are better at the theory part, finish the part 1 first and then move on to part 2. If you feel that you are better in programming and writing programs, finish part 2, then move on to part 1, because it really gives your morale a really good boost and you'll easily be able to kind of feel confident when you're writing your answers. Another thing in computers is that when you're writing, let's say differentiate between 2 things, which could be, let's say, RAM and ROM, for example, give ample number of points. They can cut your marks for writing less points, but let's say they tell you give 4 points of difference. You give only 4, but one of them is wrong, they'll cut your marks. But if you give 5 and one of them is wrong, they will give you marks. This does not only apply to computer science, but this applies to all of the subjects. Physics, they tell you to differentiate between, let's say, a conductor and an insulator. Go ahead. Another very important thing, I completely forgot to say this, examples are not counted as your point. So if you're giving examples, remember that's not counted as a point, that is only supporting your answer. But still, give examples. It really shows the teacher that you studied well for the examination. And I'd say that to score well in your theoretical part in the computer examination, well, that's very easy yet again, because when you do that, theory, it's barely anything. If you're able to solve the programs, then you should be able to solve the theory pretty easily. Overall, I think these are all the important tips that you will need. The last thing that I could tell you is maybe practice writing in a good handwriting. Yeah, the recording stopped. I must have been recording for a very long time in this case. So this is all that I really recommend, and make sure that you are timing yourself. You should know in how much time you'll be able to finish the paper. You should know how much time it takes for you to draw diagrams in biology. You should know how much time it takes for you to write, let's say, a 1-page essay, or let's say 1.5-page essay, how much time it takes for you to write your letters. Believe me, timing yourself is going to be key for you to be able to score well. Lastly, the only thing that I can tell you is that how much ever efforts you will put in now, that will literally reflect on your answer sheet and in your result. Because this is something that I noticed. I worked really hard for about a month and a half, I'd say, and I was really just able to score 93.2%. So worked out great for me, worked out really well. And if you think that one sheet of paper cannot decide my future, because this is something that I heard a lot in 10th grade, believe me, it decides your future. Let's just leave it at that. You'll find out. You'll really find out. Alright then, to conclude, the only thing that I want to tell all of you is work hard right now, and then whenever the results are out, I'm sure that you guys will perform well. If you follow all of these tips and you do everything that I'm telling you to do in this video, believe me, you'll be able to score well. If you guys need more specific or in-depth videos for any subject, or let's say you want a study timetable, let me know. I'll try making a video on that. Even I have my boards in 2 months, so I'm a little jam-packed right now. My boards will begin from April 23rd, and I'm excited for that, while yours will begin from May 5th. So all the best. Let's get this. Peace out.